British historian Hugh Trevor Roper, who questioned Hitler's entourage immediately after the end of the war, concluded that Eva Braun was uninteresting. Every other notable Hitler biographer eventually arrived at the same conclusion. But is it true? Berlin historian Goatmaker is describing the naive characteristics of Braun as well as the politically committed representation of her. She is further depicted as a scandalous mistress who utilised Hitler to aid her financial status and as a mentally unstable woman. Here today we have Braun and historian Goatmaker to discuss if any of these representations are false.
Being depicted as a committed woman who sympathised with Nazi politics, giving Hitler psychological support and were fully aware of the Nazi policies in creation. It has also been said that he made no attempt to speak out about the Holocaust. I believe that you were in the loop and knew what was going on. What are your comments on this assumption?
Well, that assumption is both true as it is false. At the initial stages of our relationship, Herr Wolf kept his political life private from me, never discussing any involvement in the political scheme. Yet, although he never discussed any of this with me, I was part of his photography team that were capturing the moments of the Nazi Party, and of course, I was aware of his leadership role. But to answer your question in short, I would say I was not really aware of his plans in the years especially between 1930 to 1935. British historians such as Ian Kershaw and Hugh Trevor Roper are blamed for shaping the image of you as insignificant. Although you were not fully aware of his intentions, to what extent did you know his plans, or when did you fully understand the impact Hitler was having on the Second World War? As I said before, at the start of our relationship, I was only aware of what intentions the Nazi Party leaked to the public. He liked for our relationship to be completely separated from the stress of his political life, and as a result, I had no true understanding of what was really going on. Herr Wolf kept me in his chalet in Berghof in 1936 so that I was relatively secluded from the rapid developments of the Second World War. It was during this time that he and I spoke of the possible outcomes of the war and where I vowed to stand by him until the end. It wasn't until the final months of the war, where Hitler took me, his beloved dog Blondie, to his bunker in Berlin, that I truly understood his impact, and how, as a result, we would both have to die to avoid the consequences of his wrongdoings. Your cousin Gertrude Weisker said you were the unhappiest woman I had ever met, that you were depressive and attempted suicide twice. Was your state of unhappiness as a result of your relationship with Hitler? To a point, yes. My unhappiness came from mine and Herr Wolf's relationship. It was all relative, though. I was 17 when I first met him, and he was 40 years old. He had his own priorities, and unfortunately for me, for most of the time, I wasn't one of them.
Your diary entries from 1935 state, "Why do I have to go through all of this? And if only I had never set eyes on him, I'm utterly miserable. I shall go out and buy some sleeping powder and go into a dreamlike state." If you were so unhappy, why did you stay with Hitler till the end and even die with him?
To put it simply, I stayed with him because our love was too great, too strong for me to walk away. But there were times where I'd fallen to my absolute lowest, my longing for him driving me crazy, where I thought my only escape was to erase the means of my pain, to erase all means of life. Although despite those darker days of my relationship with Hitler, where he wouldn't see me for months on end, never taking our relationship public, or locking me away when important guests were visiting, in hindsight I can see that he was doing this for the benefit of my safety, and when he opened up his chalet for me in Berghof, and I enjoyed his company more often and the bond we share strengthened, in the end, it was the trust in each other that urged me towards vowing to stay with him to the very end, and even if it meant the both of us ending our lives.
Modern audiences have come to know you as a naive woman, and the British historian Hugh Trevor Roper's account, The Last Days of Hitler, first stated the idea of you as a silly cow. According to Ian Kershaw, Hitler's biographer, Jelly was the only woman about whom Hitler was ever to have intense feelings or to be emotionally dependent on. Eva Braun was a classic rebound. Hitler's architect said that you would prove a great disappointment to historians, as only shallow people know themselves.
What do you think about being depicted as shallow and a rebound, or do you believe that Hitler really did respect or love you? Well, I have to disagree with this statement. I don't think that I was his rebound, or shallow for that matter. In fact, he stated that Miss Braun was the one that I can absolutely count on, so I think this representation is completely false. It does not prove that I am shallow by any means. This picture of me was also painted by a male, so I think that this statement is biased, based on his views as women not capable of mature feelings or contributions to society. And although I was not politically involved in Hitler's life, I was his backbone, someone who he fully trusted and could rely on, so this statement is completely false.
Nazi control of the media meant that many Germans were unaware you existed until after the war. But if he truly loved you, why wouldn't he publicise you? And why did he marry you one day before the pair of you ended your lives?
At the time, I struggled with this idea as well. I thought he may be embarrassed or afraid to present me as his partner, and this did contribute to my feelings of unhappiness and made me question our relationship. However, looking back at our relationship now, it is clear that he kept me away from the public eye for my own safety. With his rising power on a global scale, I would have been placed in all sorts of danger, and he had to ensure that I was trustworthy and devoted to him, and our marriage was a testament to this. He had never married before, so this was his ultimate devotion to me, and in return I kept my vow and we ended our lives the following day.
According to The Guardian, your friends and relatives say you giggled seeing a photograph of the British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain sitting on a sofa in Hitler's flat in 1938 and remarked, if only who knew what goings-ons that sofa had seen. Your father also said that you took advantage of how much Hitler spoiled you. This contradicts that your relationship was real and that you were using him for money and sex. Do you believe that this statement has any truth to it?
I feel that this statement is very accusatory, as much as it is false. Her will for my relationship was more than just his wealth and my own pleasures, but much more. A mutual respect and love that we shared for one another. I kept his secret, stayed by his side, never judgmental or politically involved in his life. In some ways or another, I was his escape, someone whom he could be himself around without the stress of being the leader of Germany. As well as this, my father was not much of a fan of our relationship, so his comments are extremely biased and does not hold much truth to it. So in answer to your question to this statement, it is false. Our relationship was very real and I did not use him.
Eva Braun features in films, plays, novels and historical memoirs, but is always portrayed as the dumb blonde who has the misfortune to fall in love with the devil, and this is an image that needs to be corrected. She was an uncompromising advocate of unconditional loyalty towards a dictator who went so far as to die with him, and he adored her.
That concludes our interview. Thank you so much for your time, Eva. It was great to learn the insights of your life.